All right, let's talk about this AJ Usyk fight.
Hmm.
Yeah, what do you think? Give me your just general impressions about this fight, how you see it going, tactics, all that kind of stuff.
It's it's a great fight. It's an interesting fight. I'm kind of going back and forth. I've been going back and forth since they made this fight, how it's going to go. I just think that Anthony Joshua is gonna he's gonna get the hometown. He's gonna have the hometown side on him,
Mm,
and I
mm,
think that Alexander Usyk, if he's to win this fight, I can't. I can envision. I can see him possibly stopping AJ late, but I don't think it's going to be a one punch knockout or anything like that. I think that Usyk mentally is going to fatigue AJ as much as physically. I think
mm.
that AJ is going to be death by a thousand feints. I think
Wow.
that's. I
Okay.
think he's gonna. I think the feints Usyk is going to give him. I think the angles Usyk is going to give him. As a AJ has never seen that kind of movement. Probably not. I think you probably said the last time we've seen a proper mover would be when he fought Savon. That was back in
Yeah.
2012, and we all
Yeah.
know. I thought he lost that fight. And Usyk, if he comes in light, and I think that's one thing I'm worried about. That's just the one thing I'm kind of fearful of is that he does go down, and I don't think he needs to. It always irritates me when a fighter moves up to heavyweight from cruiserweight. Their attributes at cruiserweight is they're faster, and they just go and chuck it away by packing on unnecessary muscle. I think if
Yeah.
Usyk's in the 220s, he can move. His left hand probably it's not as good as AJ's straight right, but Usyk is still very accurate with that left hand, and I can see AJ maybe if he comes in a bit lazy, or even if he tries to really put it on Usyk, AJ walking into left hands, getting counters, and him trying to
Mm,
kind of adjust to Usyk's angles. Maybe AJ's having to reset a lot of the times from Usyk's movement, from his feints. And I could see a situation where Usyk mentally fatigues AJ as much as physically fatigues him,
mm,
and potentially could get him, hurt or in trouble late down the stretch. I think that when I look at Usyk, especially in the Chisora fight, it was rounds kind of 7 to 10 when he came on his strongest. Now,
mm.
historically, they've been AJ's weakest rounds, kind of the mid rounds where he starts to tire a bit. He's had his early bit of success in fights. The lactic acid's built up. He needs a couple of rounds to catch his wind. You look at Pulev, he needed those rounds. Klitschko, he needed the rounds. The Ruiz rematch, they were probably Ruiz's best rounds, the kind of mid rounds.
Yeah,
So it's
that's true.
always them rounds where AJ slows down, and there Usyk, like look at Chisora, they were the rounds where he was hurting Chisora. So I think if ever there's going to be a time where Usyk really needs to step on the gas and really needs to just try and go and put it on AJ, it's them rounds. He's at his
Yeah.
weakest normally. Even Parker, like I remember watching that fight with the Sky commentary. They were the only rounds, the kind of mid rounds, 7 to 9, where Sky were actually saying he's doing good work here. He might have
Mm.
some success. So he's routinely always kind of dwelled a bit and stepped off the gas in them rounds. I'd imagine to recoup for an attack at the end. So Usyk needs to be wary of that.
Mm.
I think
So it's,
with sorry,
sorry. It sounds like you're leaning towards Usyk then.
I'm actually not. I'm picking AJ. I
Okay.
think I think I think AJ, the punching power of AJ is probably gonna is something that I'm just curious about. Like I know Gassiev is a tremendous puncher. I know a lot of people have said, was it Kevin Johnson said that he hits harder than Vitaly Klitschko, and I know Usyk's taken some shots from him, but I just feel as AJ's level of power is different, and I
Mm,
just can't help but feel that it's going to be an uppercut. I feel that's going to be AJ's best punch. I think
mm.
against Usyk, and I think that he's an underrated uppercut. A lot of people don't kind of rate it. I said that would be successful against Pulev, and it was. And I think that Usyk needs to be wary of that. He needs to be wary of the punching power. I just think that AJ is going to get the rub of the green. I think he'll win rounds legitimately, but I think come the end, it could be a situation where Usyk has won more rounds on everyone's scorecards, but we
Mm.
get a say 116, 112 scorecard in AJ's favor.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Very interesting observations, especially about the uppercut, because Usyk tends to, as Teddy Atlas says, put the earmuffs on. Yeah,
Mm.
he'll put his arms up and he'll square his shoulders up a bit. And
Mm-hmm.
from a southpaw position, that does kind of line up with the orthodox uppercut. So
Mm-hmm.
that's a good observation right there. And yeah, it's true about AJ. Now you point it out in terms of the mid rounds where he can fade a bit. The exceptions I can think of would be the Dominic Brazil fight. I think you got him out in 7,
Mm-hmm.
and the Dylan White fight. But
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, definitely against Klitschko. I mean, he was spent after the 5th round. It took him
Hmm.
ages to get any stamina back. Obviously, he got taken out by Ruiz in 7, was it? I think it was
7,
7
yeah.
rounds. And the other fight, like with Parker, he had his best moments in the middle of the fight. So yeah. Also, when I look at the experience of both guys, I have to imagine that Usyk has seen a lot more fighters like AJ, similar to AJ, than the reverse.
Hmm.
I don't think AJ's really been in the ring with anybody like Usyk. Yeah. Whereas
I
Usyk had
think
hundreds of
about
amateur fights. AJ had how many amateur fights? 45 or something?
40 something, yeah, very few. Nothing compared to Usyk.
Yeah. So Usyk would have seen big guys like that, athletic guys, guys who can, punch and all that kind of thing. So I don't think it will be that much of a shock to him in terms of the size and the reach and all that type of business. He'll know what to do.
Hmm.
But obviously, I know WSB is kind of like semi-pro type thing. I don't know what size gloves they use, and I know it's not as long of fights as proper professional fights.
No.
But I don't know. Like, yeah, I could see Usyk myself. I think he can have some success in there, especially if he comes in at a decent weight. If he's coming in too heavy, I don't like his chances. But if he comes in at a decent weight, I can see him giving AJ plenty of issues, messing with the range. AJ looking a little bit frustrated. But like you say, this is the AJ show.
Hmm.
So if there are rounds which are open to interpretation, are they realistically going to get him to Usyk? You know?
See, that's the thing I'm thinking of. It's going to be a case of he'll have to like literally win the full 3 minutes. If
Yeah.
AJ wins 30 seconds of a round and Usyk wins 2.5 minutes, it doesn't matter. They're probably going to give it to AJ. The one thing I'm kind of thinking of is we know what Usyk is all about. If imagine he actually went in there and really just from the get go tried to put it on AJ a bit,
Mm,
how would AJ react to that? Because I think with Usyk, we know what he's going to bring to the table. He's going to bring movement. He's going to bring feints. He's going to bring volume. Imagine he actually just went in and just decided, you know what, earmuffs on. I'm just going to meet fire with fire. Do you
mm.
think that could be something that AJ mentally wouldn't have planned for?
I mean, maybe. Um, I have to imagine after what happened to him against Ruiz, though,
Hmm.
that he would be more prepared now for any eventuality. Whether somebody comes out and rushes him or, and especially if
Hmm.
Usyk comes in heavy. If he comes in like 230 pounds, the way they're suggesting, then surely AJ is going to be thinking this guy might try and put it on me
Hmm.
because why would he need to come in that heavy if he's going to run around?
I think one thing AJ needs to do, and I think people underestimated this from the Povetkin fight, was that low left hand with the jab. That was so good at offsetting Povetkin. Like
Mm,
bringing Povetkin into attack and AJ could counter. And one thing about that fight that when I look at, I just think if he does this against Usyk, he'll have success. Was his jab, but his jab to the body. I mean, that just took the wind out of Povetkin. That jab to the body. Every time he
mm,
got near, it wasn't his head. It was just going and tapping him in the body, tapping him in the body. And it's a heavy jab that AJ has.
mm.
So I think things like he's been training more with Angel Fernandez for this fight because remember, what Rob McCracken is it Rob or yes, Rob
Yeah,
McCracken.
Rob
He's
McCracken. Yeah.
been he's been out at the Olympics with Team
Hmm.
GB. So for the
Hmm.
majority of this camp, he would have been training with Angel Fernandez. How much of an impact will that be? Will it be just AJ doing what Angel Fernandez has taught him in training, and Rob McCracken just kind of being there to just remind him what he needs to know?
Yeah, that's interesting. That's interesting. Personally, nothing against Rob McCracken as a person or whatever, but I've never really rated what he teaches. Um, obviously he trained Carl Froch and several other fighters and the
Hmm.
amateurs and whatever. But a tree is known by its fruits. I look at AJ and I look at his technique through most of his career. It hasn't really developed in the way that I would like to see it develop. But
No.
once this Angel Fernandez guy came on the scene, we started seeing certain things. Like you say in the Povetkin fight, to me, he looked more fluid in the Povetkin fight than he looked
Hmm.
previously. Yeah. And for a big guy like AJ, who's very muscular, keeping a lot of people can't seem to get their heads around this, right? People been down the gym and hit the bag a few times, can't seem to get their heads around when you're talking about 6'6" 240, 250 pound heavyweight, keeping their hands up is
Hmm.
actually pretty tiring.
Yeah.
So just from a energy conservation point of view, keeping your hands down can actually help you stay more relaxed. It can help with your energy and all that kind of thing. People used to look at Lennox Lewis and say that he would often look lazy in the ring sometimes, certain performances. But a lot of it was to do with him recharging his batteries.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, keeping your hands up all the time for a big guy like that, big long arms and heavy arms, is tiring. So that's a good way to manage your energy, is to know when you can actually drop your hands,
Mm-hmm.
rest yourself a little bit.
The thing I like about having that left hand down is it offsets the opponent so much. Is you throw in a jab because you can lead with a hook a lot easier with your hand down, and I
Yeah.
think that's another reason why I think AJ works for him is that he has them long arms. He can actually, and his left hook is quite good. He can actually lead in with the left hook with it in that position. It's always making your opponent think.
Yeah, his left hook's very good. Yeah,
Yes.
because when the hand is down there, they don't know what you're going to turn it into. Is it going to be a jab to the head, a jab to the body? Is it going to be a hook? Like what's he going to do with it? And yeah, it's definitely true, because when the hand is up in a normal position, like you got the earmuffs on,
Yeah.
they can see it more easily. It's not down by your knee where it's coming outside of their peripheral vision. It's right there in front of them, so they can see it more easily. So yeah, I like it when he fights like that as well. But interesting fight against Usyk. Bit of trivia. I think I could be wrong here, but I think it might be the first time that two Olympic gold medalists, one heavyweight and one super heavyweight, have fought each other in a pro ring since, I want to say, Lennox Lewis and Ray Mercer. And I'm talking about two Olympic gold medalists who medaled at the same Olympics, because Lewis got gold for Canada at the 88 Olympics in Seoul, and Ray Mercer got gold for the United States at heavyweight, the weight below, at that same Olympics. So I think this might be the first time since then that has happened.
Did I'm trying to think? Did Francesco Demiani, did he not medal at? I think because remember he fought Tyrell Biggs.
But I know obviously Biggs won the gold in the
Mhm.
84 Olympics. But yeah, I think it might be that. If there's any buffins out there in the comments, I'm sure they'll tell me to look it up on BoxRec or Wikipedia or whatever. But yeah, it just occurred to me then, because when Lewis fought Mercer, they did talk about it at the time. These guys are both gold medalists from the same Olympics, one heavyweight, one super. So
Here's the question I have, right? And I don't look. Me and you are on the same pages. I do not agree with having rematch clauses for mandatories. I think it's just a massive holdup. Let's just play devil's advocate here. If Alexander Usyk was to win on Saturday and he was to win in good fashion, do you think AJ is running and jumping for the rematch? I know with Ruiz, it's a different style. He knew what he did wrong. But if Usyk really does do a good job and hurts and drops AJ, gives him a bit of a beat, can you see him taking the rematch?
I think he would. Yeah, I think he would, because not just for himself, but all the pressure that would be on him, because a lot of people are eating off AJ. He's a lot of people's primary source of income, and they don't want to see their income go down. So all the people around him, Chris Andre was talking about the way Malik Scott deals with Deontay Wilder, and he knows what buttons to press and how to deal with him to get him to do what he wants him to do. With AJ, I'm sure nobody's going to come and say, yo, AJ, I got a mortgage to pay. You need to get back in there with Usyk. People are going to approach him like that, but they might try and, speak to him in a way that he would be receptive to. Like say, oh, this is a new challenge for you, AJ. You can do it. Like you did the same with Ruiz. You can do it here with Usyk. And I think there'll be a lot of people on his case saying all these kind of things.
See, I can see that as well, but I can also see them looking at Deontay Wilder, Tyson Fury, and if Tyson Fury wins the trilogy, they might just say, do you know what? That fight's still big. Title or no title, it's still big fight in the UK. Let's just put him in with Fury. Let's just cash him out. Because he
That's a
probably
good
still
point.
would make more money from Fury, win or lose.
Yeah, that's a good point. That's a good point. I guess it all depends on, the nature of the loss. If he was to lose to Usyk, exactly what went wrong and all these kind of things. Because like against Ruiz, it was one moment, it was one mistake that cost him. Now, for all we know, Ruiz might have got to him later on in the fight anyway. If that hadn't happened in the third round, who knows? But in his head, from a rebuilding point of view, it was just one mistake.
Mm-hmm.
Prior to that, the first couple rounds, yeah, Ruiz was applying pressure, but he weren't really landing anything. It was AJ landing all the good shots. So in his mind, when he's coming back, he can think, okay, I can just rectify the one mistake. Yeah. Same like with Dylan White when he fought Povetkin.
Mm-hmm.
Certainly in retrospect, he definitely just saw it as one mistake. And he thought, I just need to correct this one little thing and I've got it. So it all depends. And obviously with the Ruiz fight, it was one mistake that led to a sustained beating over several rounds.
Mm-hmm.
If that happened in the Usyk fight, maybe one mistake and then it all goes wrong, he might take enough heart from it. Eddie Hearn might take enough heart from it to go back in. But yeah, what you're saying is definitely a very interesting point and it sounds very plausible to me that they might just say, let's go for the winner of Fury against Wilder. Yeah.
There's one thing you said there that actually it's always baffled me about Adrian. I only just thought of it there. Is his recovery skills and lack thereof, I should say. Do you ever find it strange that, like, with Andy Ruiz, when AJ's hurt, he stays hurt and he kind of tends to fade a bit. But do you not find it strange that most fighters, like Andy Ruiz, when he hurt, he just waited and waited and waited? Do you think that if you're Alexander Usyk and you hurt AJ, known as his track record of taking a long time to recover, you just go for broke?
You'd have to jump on him. You'd have to
Yeah.
jump on him. But then again, it depends on how much Usyk really trusts the officials. Because when Usyk fought Chisora, I think people have tried to, how can I describe? They tried to maybe exaggerate it a little bit, hype it a little bit. But Usyk wasn't happy about certain things that took place in that Chisora fight, like Chisora's gloves and all types of things. He was basically insinuating that Chisora was the house fighter and they were trying to do things to help him win the fight. So it all depends on how confident Usyk is of getting a fair shake. If he's not confident of getting a fair shake and he manages to hurt AJ, then he's going to have to jump on him, But if he truly believes he's going to get a fair play from the judges, then maybe you wouldn't want to jump on him because it's a gamble at the end of the day. If you jump on a big guy like that, and it's tough jumping on a big guy because just tackling somebody that size, throwing punches at them, they'll be blocking with their arms, grabbing you. It can take so much energy out of you. Like going all out on a smaller guy isn't as taxing as going all out on a bigger guy, just because of the physical body contact and all that kind of thing. So it's a gamble. And Usyk isn't really a guy to go all out. I can't think of a time actually that Usyk has gone all out. He gradually breaks people down, from what I can remember.
Yeah, the only time I could think of him hurting the guy and really going for it was Marco Huck when he hurt him late. That's the only one that springs to mind. The rest of me just was happy to just play the long game, play the waiting game.
Yeah. And Marco Huck was, way past his best at that point, so he could go for it. Whereas against Bellew, he slowly broke him down. Didn't really, because he hurt him or stung him a few times prior to actually getting a knockout, but he didn't go for it. He just playing a patient waiting game, and he eventually got him. So if he's not going to go for it against somebody like Bellew, is he really going to go for it against AJ? I don't know. I don't know whether that's his character.
As you say, unless he feels the judges won't do him any favors, I need to.
Yeah. Maybe it's a dramatic fight. Maybe, hypothetical scenario, if AJ's outboxing him and he manages to hurt AJ late, absolutely, he would have to go for it, whether he thinks he's going to get a fair shake or not. So,
in some ways, I look at AJ, and this is probably a silly thing to think of, but in some ways, you kind of look to yourself and you think, I actually wish he would open up. If you're an opponent, you think, if I could just weather a storm from AJ, he needs 3 rounds, I can just step on him then. Like, I know it's a risk for the opponent because he's a big guy, he hits hard, but in your mind, you have to think, if he does open up on me and I can weather that storm, I've got a good 3 rounds of him not doing anything.
Yeah, there was somebody on a live I did the other day who said that AJ doesn't handle raw aggression. At least that was their perception, is he doesn't handle raw aggression particularly well. I can't remember who he mentioned, but he was talking about, a certain, might have been a fighter who he thinks that they'd be able to take AJ in a street fight because of the fact he don't handle raw aggression. And there's actually somebody I know who used to go to Finchley, right, when AJ was an amateur there,
Mm-hmm.
and he said that there was a bum off the street who came to training there. The guy was, he apparently had like long hair. He maybe only weighed 180 pounds or something like that. And he got in the ring and gave AJ the business. this guy who he described to me as a crackhead, and he said he gave AJ the business. Yeah, he said when this guy would spar with anybody else, because they put him in the ring and he was moving about with other people, but he weren't going for it. But when they put him in the ring with AJ, he absolutely just he punched AJ all up and down the ring. So there might be something to that. Some fighters handle that type of raw aggression better than other fighters do. And if AJ is somebody that doesn't handle it that well, then yeah, maybe he's more vulnerable to the kind of attacks that you're talking about than we realize. Where if
Mm-hmm.
somebody just went in there and put it on him early, it might have success.
I think it's just there's so many ifs and buts on this fight. I just think it's fun. I'm just so happy we're getting it. Like I said, the only thing is, like, I don't like seeing rematches for mandatories, which is kind of the one kind of red flag I have about this fight. But other than that, like, I just think this fight's just going to be. I can't not see drama in this. I can't not
Yeah,
see this being a foreign fight.
yeah, it's a great fight. So your prediction is going to be
AJ, probably majority decision.
okay. Yeah, I'm going to go for AJ on points as well. I just think that Usyk won't be aggressive enough. I don't think it's his game to be aggressive. I'm hoping he comes in light enough to whereby he can offset AJ's power and stay on the outside of his power, mess with the range and all that kind of thing. And yeah, but I just see the machine behind AJ in a fight where there's going to be rounds that are open to interpretation.
Mm-hmm.
I think it will go in his favor. And the thing is with AJ, because he's so popular, even if he gets a questionable decision, the public here are not going to question it. I would imagine most of them are not going to question it. They're going to say, "Come on, man, AJ won the fight," and it will be one of them ones that get swept under the rug, because of how popular he is.
And lest we forget, if the big fight, the fight they all want is Fury AJ. Do you remember 3 years ago when it was Wilder AJ was being talked about? Luis Ortiz versus Wilder, the 8th round. Just out of nowhere, a doctor came in and just gave Wilder extra time.
Yeah.
Because they thought there was a bigger fight. Something like that. The powers that be in boxing knowing AJ needs to get by this. We've got Fury next. Do whatever you can to get him by this.
Yeah, I can see that happening. I mean, not that AJ doesn't have the ability to win it legit. I think he does.
No, definitely.
It wouldn't at all surprise me if AJ just wins it in a legitimate fashion where we're not here arguing about robberies or anything like that. Yeah, he could do that, but I'm expecting a competitive fight. Certainly, if Usyk comes in closer to 220 than 230, I'm expecting a competitive fight, a tricky fight for AJ, maybe a bit of a frustrating fight for the fans. It might not be full of drama because both guys tend to be quite conservative in their boxing approach, especially these days. AJ earlier on in his career was a lot more hell for leather, but as he's progressed through his career, he tends to be a bit more circumspect. And, especially against the southpaw, fights against southpaws generally are more low volume for the orthodox fighter. Yeah, because often their jabs are clashing. They can't get their jab off. They can't get a lot of the body shots that normally throw off. And all they're looking for is a straight right hand down the pipe.
Yeah.
So it could be a cagey one, but it's going to be an interesting one. So definitely looking forward to it.
Definitely. I can't wait for this.
Yeah. All right. Well, thanks for joining me on this.
Anytime.
And, we'll definitely do more of these, talk about some other fights. In fact, what other fights are coming up other than AJ Usyk? What's on the undercard of AJ Usyk?
We got a Coley making the defense. Callum Smith versus, I can't remember the guy's name. He's a kind of fringe contender at light heavyweight. Florian Marku and Campbell Hatton. The undercard is absolute, you know what, it's absolute dog. But the main event is good.
All right. It's all good then. All right, peeps. Until next time, we're out.
Peace.
Come and join me on Patreon and access my weekly no-holds-barred, censorship-free podcast where we lift the lid on a wide range of controversial topics. It's not mainstream friendly, it's not politically correct, but that's the whole point. We dare to stand as a beacon of reason against an army of insanity. Just head on over to my Patreon page and select the tier called Hatman Hot Topics. You'll gain access to a minimum of 2 hours of exclusive content every single week, including podcasts, videos, interviews, live stream Q&A sessions, as well as my popular Confessions of a Nightclub Bouncer series. Not to mention a vast back catalog of hundreds of hours of previous episodes. You can listen via the Patreon app with the option to download in high quality MP3. We've also got a Discord server where you can come and chat and hang out with myself and other members. There's no contract, no commitment, and you can cancel at any time. So come and join our community of free and critical thinkers by signing up with me here on Patreon today.